Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcast apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are breaking down the NFC side of the NFL draft. So we will be recapping each NFC team's selections. We will breeze over the defensive players and just talk about any offensive players that we find interesting for fantasy purposes. But first, Jeff, we had some league news actually happen this week.
Yeah, I like it. Let's keep it coming. Let's keep this off season very nice, very fresh. But the first piece of news came down about a week ago, and that's the 49ers and tight end George Kittle agreed to a 4-year extension. And basically, what that does is it makes sure that George Kittle is around with the 49ers for the foreseeable future. Do I expect him to last all 4 seasons? No, I do not. But this puts him at the highest average annual value for tight ends. So good deal for Brock Purdy here, right?
I mean, it's always nice to have your safety blanket locked up and here with you going into this season and next.
Yeah, he definitely needs his pacifier to keep him a little bit more happy going into this season.
Your dismissal of Brock Purdy is ridiculous.
I don't think he's the truck. I think that he's the trailer and he needs to be pulled, and he can't be the one doing the pulling. I think you only pay people that can do the pulling. But what do I know? I've never worked in the NFL.
Well, I think he and Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott, I've said this several times, are the same caliber of player, just different stages of their career. So I think everything you say about Brock Purdy, you could say about Dak,
Yeah, I don't think I've
except
ever loved Dak though either. But he has had some pretty bad teams where before CeeDee Lamb was part of the team and he actually had all of the team along.
I don't think in a lot of ways that the team that Dak has had has been really significantly worse than what Brock Purdy's had.
The 49ers had elite talent everywhere.
I don't think Ayuk is an elite talent. They just got Pearsall. I don't think Debo is an elite talent. I think you can make a case Kittle for sure. They had elite left tackle, but Dallas had a good offensive line when Dak first got there. So the defense definitely has had good pieces, but I don't think every position was that set. I just think they had good coaching. So I think Dallas has had terrible coaching. So you can take that away, but Dak, he's been to the playoffs. He doesn't win in the playoffs. Brock Purdy is already 4-2 as a starter in the playoffs. And that's more than most of the young quarterbacks out there right now. Like we can do a third of the league and they still don't have 4 wins in the playoffs.
Don't disagree with you completely. However, I don't think I've seen a great change from Jimmy Garoppolo to Brock Purdy. I think their playoff records were very similar.
Yeah. I still think Brock Purdy is an upgrade over Jimmy, but I think we can argue about just how much or how little.
Yeah, I think to pay a fifth of your salary cap to a guy that isn't playing your team, I don't know. I don't know. So we'll see how it is. Pua seems to agree with me there that when they pay Brock Purdy, that the 49ers window is closed.
I just think the amount of quarterbacks that can quote unquote, for Jeff's terminology, pull a team along is maybe 5 guys total. So,
I could argue that those guys deserve more money than they're getting right now, or the other guys deserve less
well,
of the cap.
Dak's the one who ruined the market, so it's all his
Well,
fault. Yeah. But
wasn't
ultimately,
just Dak.
as Dak and Trevor Lawrence destroyed the quarterback market,
Well, Dak's first payment got that going because Dallas decided to not pay him and they tagged him. And now he can't be tagged again because I believe he was tagged twice, right?
no, it was worked into the contract.
Okay.
Their
He played
previous
on the tag one
contract.
year though, right?
I think so. But their previous contract, there was a no trade clause, there was a no tag clause, and they had to overpay him or let him walk for basically nothing.
Yeah. Uh,
Gotta got that
Based
third
off of
round
last
comp pick
season,
back.
based off of last season, they should just let him walk.
No, I mean I don't totally disagree with you on that, but also you're trying out there trying to keep guys like CeeDee Lamb happy, and now we'll get to it in a few minutes, but they have another wide receiver that they'll have to keep happy as well. But let's stay on the 49ers little bandwagon here. And, the Eagles have now cut former a third round pick of the 49ers, Ty Davis Price, running back, and that's just kind of surprising. I thought for sure that he would have had like the third or fourth running back job on the roster, but he won't even have a camp job at this point.
yeah.
Thoughts on
He,
that?
he doesn't really move the needle for me. I was never on his bandwagon. So,
I've always liked 49ers running back.
not Ty David Price. I learned my lesson earlier with Tevin Coleman and the other guys that they had previously.
Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, those guys.
Even you can add Elijah Mitchell into that. I know he had one good year, but
It's hard for me to get on. I was never an Elijah Mitchell person, and it's even harder now that he's on Kansas City with what they've done this offseason. I think the only running backs I could buy is Pacheco for 2025, and then Brashard Smith for Dynasty start throw really late.
my Pacheco stock just got a little bit higher based on what the Chiefs did with drafting, but I know Hunt's back in the fold, so I don't think he's going to get a full heavy workload. But who is sticking around though for the Eagles is tight end Dallas Goedert, and that was after much trade conversation. But they will be keeping him on a restructured deal for 2025. This is a great deal for both of them because the Eagles are obviously coming off of the Super Bowl, and if they want to repeat, they probably need one of the pieces that win the Super Bowl. So I think this is great for them. I think that their passing game on a whole, though, might be more hit or miss week to week based on the weapons that they have. So I know last year I got burned by AJ Brown in a redraft league because I had taken him as my first round pick, and I don't really believe that he performed as a first round pick last year. Reading books on the sideline.
I don't know how I feel about Goddard for fantasy. I mean, he's been a very solid tight end in the league. He's been a good fantasy tight end for a few years, but I'm not sure if he cracks up as a top 12. So I don't think he's a tight end one. I don't know if moving would have made a difference for him either. So I don't know how to feel about him here, Jeff.
I mean, I think it's good for them to potentially repeat. I think that he's a top 10 option tight end still, but I think it's a lot closer now than it ever has been before, and I think he was for sure in the top 10 before. But right now, I have Goddard. Actually, I have him outside my top 10. I have him at tight end 12. So he's a tight end one, but the last tight end one. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think I can have him as a tight end one. There's
Really?
yeah.
I mean, he missed almost half the season last year and finished 27.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be able to play a full season.
Okay. I mean, that was his first injury, so you're predicting
Yeah,
another
but
injury from him?
it's not necessarily that I'm predicting another injury for him. I'm predicting that he's older now and his recovery isn't what it used to be, and his body is gonna start breaking down. Like he'll get like little small stuff that might keep him out of a game or two. I don't know.
That's fair. But he's 30. He'll be 30 this entire season, so not super old for in the terms of tight ends. But at last, I mean, your boy Zach Ertz will be 35 midseason. So I don't even want to
Hurts.
hear the conversation of Ertz over Goddard.
I mean, they should have let Goddard leave instead of Ertz. I think Ertz is a better tight end.
They absolutely could not have afforded Ertz at the time.
Well, if you look at points per game, Ertz edges out Goddard.
The last 5 years.
Weekend. How far will this go? Can we do a custom range here?
Anything for you.
So in 2024, so last year he edged him out. Did he play? Where's Ertz on this list? I don't think
I don't think he played either.
not 2023. Goddard won 2023.
Some of it is
Goddard.
that he just didn't
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
I think says that because did he get, isn't he a guy that played 17 games before 17 games were a thing because he was traded mid-season? I think he got traded from the Eagles to the Cardinals mid-season. He played an 18 game season or 17 game season before 17 games were a thing. But either way,
No,
I'll
they
keep
are
him as tight
so
end 12.
close. Yeah, they're so close to each other.
Well, if you want to know, I have Ertz as my 14th tight end and Goddard as my 12th.
I think
You're
we're
not
gonna
wrong.
historically, like almost every year, they're fairly close on a per game basis.
They're probably close friends too in real life.
Maybe.
Well, they were in the same locker room for a very long time, so. Oh, right. So, I had alluded to a bit of a trade that went down with the Cowboys. And the Cowboys trade a third round pick for Steelers wide receiver George Pickens. So Alex in one league has officially now collected all of the Dallas Cowboy wide receivers. Alex, how do you feel about this trade, and how are you feeling about your locker room full of Dallas Cowboys?
So I think it's a good move for the Cowboys. I think it'll open up their offense. I think it's the best wide receiver duo that they've had that I can remember. And the last time it was Roy Williams and T.O. was the last time I can remember them having as good, but they also had Jason Witten at that time, I think. So that's the only thing. I don't like having Lamb, Pickens, and Tolbert all at the same time because I feel that's counterproductive. But Pickens' value definitely went up, at least for 2025, because of this, and I think it'll open things up for CD Lamb as well. So it'd be extremely hard to double cover CD Lamb uh, with Pickens and Tolbert out on the edges there. So it'll make the offense improve as long as Schottenheimer is actually good at his job.
Absolutely, but that's TBD. That is TBD. I don't know how that team's going to go this year with their coaching situation. Oh, right. Two more pieces of league news that have come down in recent days. Jaguars released wide receiver Gabriel Davis after 1 year. That went exactly how you predicted it. And yeah, that's we got to talk where his landing spot's going to be, and we also let you take your victory lap.
I always thought it was a weird signing that you give Gabe Davis $39 million over 3 years to be a wide receiver 3 or 4 on your team. It made no sense.
Well, when they
And
signed him, he was wide receiver too. They didn't have Brian Thomas yet. They didn't know they were going to get him. That's why free
you already
agency takes
had
place
Kirk
before the draft.
Cousins. Or not, sorry, Christian Kirk. You already had Christian Kirk that you were paying a huge contract to that you overpaid when you signed him too. So they overpaid two different wide receivers to go to Jacksonville, and now neither one of them is on their roster with the new head coach and new GM.
That deal turned out pretty well though for the Jaguars of the Kirk one, I think overall.
Yeah, I mean it's still an overpay, and the Texans are paying less for the 1 year than Jacksonville paid per on a per year basis. But I don't know. What it was an overpay because Kirk is not a wide receiver one type guy, and Gabe Davis to me is a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 max. So I don't know why they had to overpay. Maybe no free agent wanted to go to Jacksonville because they thought it was a terrible spot and they wouldn't compete, but it didn't work out. And Gabe Davis is on the street. They replaced him with Diane B. Brown. They also drafted Hunter. They're moving on. And I don't see many opportunities for Gabe Davis to have a significant fantasy role, at least. To get on a roster, I think he'll get on a roster. I think a Bills reunion isn't off the table. I think Miami likes to go after recycled guys.
Miami feels kind of full right now though. A lot of teams feel kind of full.
Yeah, a lot of teams at this point, for sure. I really don't know how many teams he could go to. Jeff, where do you think he's going to go?
Well, Atlanta and now Pittsburgh have open spots at their wide receiver 2 or 3 positions. So
Yep.
that's one potential possibility that I could see. I know you mentioned offline that he could go back to the Bills, something like that, or I mean, there's other teams out there that could use another receiver. I think the Browns could use another receiver. I think well, the Jags could use another receiver now because they pretty much have three receivers: Thomas, Hunter, and Jawami Brown. It doesn't feel daunting per se.
Well, there's still guys like Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper in free agency too.
Yeah, we just don't know how serious that they are about signing a new deal though and continuing their playing career. They're up there in age. So that's one thing that we don't take into consideration on this is if they still want to play. So but they are on the waiver wire as you said. But this season Cooper is gonna be 31. Keenan Allen's gonna be just turned 33. So those don't seem like they're needle movers per se.
No. But I think Keenan Allen has more to give than Amari Cooper at this point.
Absolutely. I mean that's just different types of receivers that they are, so I think that really helps. But Gabe Davis is only 26 years old still, and he just turned 26. He's still on the younger side.
He's just a fringe talent though. He's not a starter in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean he could be a three field stretcher, but scored 4 touchdowns in that one playoff game.
Maybe Josh Allen wants him back and they bring him back over. That's the only real situation I can see.
Yeah, that room feels a little bit crowded, but stranger things have happened.
Oh, I mean maybe the Jets too. I forgot they existed for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Also possible, for what I have on my list here, the Rams look like they could use another receiver, a fourth receiver as well, because they have Nakua, Adams, and Atwell as their three receivers and nothing much really behind them. And then you also have Seattle that has JSN, Cup, MVS, and then not much behind them, but I would rather have Davis over MVS be down third receiver. But yeah, Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's on the list for sure. Seattle, I would say the Rams. My ideal spot's Atlanta though, because I could fit him right into his stats and his spot right there, because they're hurting for weapons right now. Which is funny because in year two they went out and got Bryce Young weapons in Carolina, and I know it didn't work out at the beginning of the year, but it looks like Atlanta's going the opposite route, and they are using the least amount of weapons possible, keeping it a minimalist for Michael Penix in his first season as the starter.
Oh, Jeff, they already got the weapons. They just have to keep shaking them to see if they work. Like Pitts. This is the year he's gonna break out again, Jeff. This is the year he gets it together. That's what they're going for.
Sometimes that toy that you have to keep shaking is a bad toy.
He had a great rookie year and then just never lived up to that since.
Yeah, I'm on the verge of cutting him in a league because I just don't believe he's worth the money. And I just think that there's better tight ends that I could get cheaper.
Well, I've seen someone trade for him. I mean, they're out there, Jeff. You might be able to get someone to take him.
We will see. I might have to take on some salary in return. But the last little bit of news before we get to the draft piece is the Panthers place running back Jonathan Brooks on the pup, and that means he will not play for all of 2025. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I don't know how they can say him being placed on the pup means he won't play for the whole year, but based off of his injury, I don't think he's going to play the whole year, so it doesn't really matter. Why I don't know why they didn't just jump straight to IR, but whatever.
I don't think you can in the off season. IR slots don't begin until uh, the last day of cut down. So if anyone
But
goes on pup after the first day of training camp, so like you get that first like day or two of training camp where you can put people on pup and take them off accordingly. But any other time, so like the off season right now or in the middle of the preseason, you're gonna be out for the season if you go on.
I don't know. We know that they extended Chuba Hubbard, whatever his name is.
Yep.
They brought in Rico Dowdle, and then they drafted the other ETN. So they have three capable running backs. They don't need Brooks this year. I do question whether or not the amount that they've tackled that position. Does that show that they don't think Brooks is ever going to come back and be a valuable contributor, or it's just they're just covering their bases for this year because that's quite the investment in that group.
Yeah, I know you and I talked offline about this, but I believe that Brooks and Dell are kind of done as far as NFL big talents right now.
You're saying Jonathan Brooks and Tank Dell
Yeah.
both done. I think they both have a chance to recover. Um,
Telling me
Brooks's
there's a chance.
Brooks's knee injury is something that happens all the time that people can come back from. It's a little concerning. It happened the same knee twice,
Yeah, within a year almost.
but that could mean that he was also rushed back too early, maybe. Dell's injury was a little catastrophic, but he's only 60 something pounds or 170 pounds, very slight. He's not going to put a lot of stress on it even when he cuts. He's a wide receiver, and that's a little less physical on the knee than being a running back and running through linemen all the time. So, I mean, that helps balance it off, but neither one's guaranteed to get fully healthy and have a career at this point.
Oh, right. So we will see. Dell's coming back from catastrophic knee injury, so we'll see if he can run ever again, let alone
Yeah.
play. But this is 2 years, two major injuries for him. And I know I've heard people allude to Will Fuller, and I know you say that they're different types of receivers, but their injury history is growing on that here.
Will Fuller's injuries were mostly soft tissue as well, completely different.
Yeah. For sure. All right, Alex, let's get to our NFL NFC draft recap. And we now have had a little bit of time to analyze some of these picks. And the first team up is the Arizona Cardinals. And Alex, do you want to go over some of the picks at the Cardinals?
So the Arizona Cardinals decided to go almost entirely defense in this draft. They got Walter Nolan, the defensive lineman out of Ole Miss, at pick number 16 in the first round, which I nailed exactly on the mock draft. I don't know how or why, but that's what it was. They also got Will Johnson out of Michigan in the second round. I was concerned he wasn't going to be in the first round at all, but he has good upside there. In the Jordan Bush, the defensive lineman out of Oregon, in the third, Cody Simon, linebacker out of Ohio State. Denzel Burke, cornerback out of Ohio State. And then they got offensive lineman in Hayden Connor out of Texas. In the sixth, Kyton Crawford, safety out of Nevada. In the seventh, and then Jaden Davis, cornerback in the seventh as well. So a lot of defensive picks. I missed Tejon Palmer, the wide receiver. I'm not really concerned about him at all. And I think this draft shows faith in the weapons that they already have. So it's a big boost for James Conner and Trey Benson. They don't have any additional competition. Same with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson and McBride. Those are going to be the three primary weapons in the passing game as well. So everything on offense looks great for status quo. It's the defense that they targeted here.
Yeah, I see that. They're really trying to give Kyler every last hope to move forward. And I really hope that he takes this team a little bit further, especially with Marvin Harrison in year two. Marvin Harrison has all of his Jersey Gate stuff completely behind him. If anyone followed, you couldn't get a Marvin Harrison Jr. jersey for the longest time because he had a dispute with Fanatics. It's been resolved. You can buy his jersey now. If anyone listens to this and buys this jersey, Marvin Harrison, you can send thank yous our way. But the team should be better defensively this year, keeping them in some ball games. I think that the Pointers take a small step back this year just because of the turnover that they're going through right now. They do get Salah back, so they might not take as big of a step back as I thought previously. But the Rams also are getting older. We're getting to the end of Matthew Stafford's career. There's a chance that the Cardinals here could swoop right in. I mean, you have Sam Darnold with a little bit of turnover with the receivers also in Seattle. This team is poised to be in an interesting spot this year, especially with the defense.
We will see if this was enough to compete with the rest of their division. But we have another defensive draft here. The Atlanta Falcons. They, at pick number 15, took Jalen Walker, the edge out of Georgia, and then they traded up to the Rams position at number 26 to take James Pierce Jr., the edge out of Tennessee. And they gave up a future first as well as, I believe, their second round pick to move up to get this guy. That is quite a lot to do so. So they must really believe in him, which makes me wonder why they didn't take him at 15. But third round, Xavier Watts, another safety for that group. I thought they were done there. And then fourth round, they took Billy Bowman Jr., another safety. And then they rounded out at the end in the seventh round to get Jack Nelson, an offensive tackle out of Wisconsin. So, like we said earlier, the Falcons have really then done nothing at the skill position this offseason for offense, and they're either buying into their talent there to perform or they're just neglecting that side of the ball at a time when they need to be getting their young quarterback as many weapons as possible.
Yeah. I'm not really sure how I like their draft. I mean, they acquired another first round pick. That edge has to be really good to give up a 2026 first round pick. I mean, from the Rams standpoint, I love it because they got another first round pick in 2026 where they could potentially go get that quarterback that I just mentioned that Stafford was getting a little bit older. So this could help them get their quarterback of the future. Last year, I expected them to go more defense, especially with the defensive head coach. But they went Michael Penix in the first round last year, and they just spent a whole bunch of money on Kirk Cousins, and that was a little bit surprising. And now they're not really doing much to help Penix, in my opinion. So these last two drafts for Atlanta, while there might be some good picks that come out of it, I just feel like have been so all over the map. And it doesn't look like they're working towards one particular goal. It looks like they're trying to improve in multiple spots in multiple areas. So we'll see if it works out, but I'm not hopeful right now. What I saw from Penix last year doesn't make me think he's going to be a top 15 quarterback.
I thought we had some breaking news for a second. All it says is Nick Chubb is not returning to the Browns. I thought we were having a Nick Chubb actual signing.
That's breaking. That's breaking. No, that makes sense, and I saw that earlier today, and it kind of confused me as well. But I think that at this point in time, a lot of beat writers and even national writers write material so people click on things, so for clickbait purposes. All right, we need to move to the Carolina Panthers next. Alex, who do the Carolina Panthers?
They surprised both of us by taking Tet McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona, first at the 8th overall pick. They took Nick Skirton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M that I liked more than his counterpart, Shamar Stewart, who went in the first round. Third round, they took Princely, I cannot say his last name. We're just gonna say Princely, Princely U, the edge out of Ole Miss. Trevor Etienne, Travis Etienne's brother, also running back. This one, he played in Georgia instead of Florida. Latham Ranson, safety out of Ohio State, who I kind of like. Cam Jackson, defensive lineman out of Florida. Mitchell Evans, tight end out of Notre Dame. Some thought he'd go higher than this point. And then Jimmy Horn Jr., wide receiver out of Colorado. Ultimately, I thought this was probably maybe a top 5 or top 6 draft class, especially I should say this would be in my top 5 out of this draft class of hauls. So I thought Carolina did a really good job with this.
Yeah, me too. I think they hit all of their need areas. Also, I think that they've stocked up a few weapons to get these cupboards full for either Bryce Young or if Bryce Young doesn't pan out this year for whatever is in their future. So now they have the cupboards full for a while here. McMillan, Leggett, Coker, Thielen, Renfro. I mean, that's a pretty good 5 receiver core. And then you add David Moore, who had some good chemistry with Bryce Young.
Then you have Jimmy Horn Jr., who might have been the best wide receiver at Colorado. Trying to see if you react to that. Way better than that Travis Hunter guy.
Yeah. I'm interested in Mitchell Evans, see what he's got also.
Yeah.
I'm interested in Trevor Etienne, but I don't see him moving past the third running back slot this year. And then, I mean, he might bump Brooks next year. So
Yeah. Well,
there's
I
that
think
possibility too.
hyperbole and teasing aside, I think Jimmy Horn Jr. is actually an intriguing wide receiver as well. So it makes me wonder, do they believe in Leggett? Do they believe in Coker or any of these other guys? I mean, they already moved on from Mingo last year. Travis, I'm sorry, Adam Thielen, I don't know how much longer he's going to be there. Like this, if he plays, this might be his last year. If he doesn't, they might cut him if he doesn't contribute enough because they're trying to fill that room. But I like Mitchell Evans enough as a tight end too for this team, but I still like Jatavian Sanders, who they took last year as well. So they got two young tight ends to battle it out to see which one's gonna start.
Yeah, I also brought back Tommy Tremble, but I believe that Jatavian Sanders will be the one, and then Mitchell and Tremble will fight out for number two. Their receiver position is anyone's guess right now because there's a scenario where Thielen is still Bryce Young's favorite toy, and they really use him for what is projected to be his last year. And then we have, yeah, I feel really good about their draft. I feel like the defense is going to get better this year. Feel like the offense, as long as it can be what it was at the end of last season and build on that, I think that they could finish number two in the division behind the Bucks really easily.
All right.
Let's move. So speaking of Nick Chubb, let's move on to the Chicago Bears. That's where the rumored landing spot for Nick Chubb is eventually. So we'll see if it ever comes to fruition and figure it out.
All right, so Chicago, the 10th overall pick, they took Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. That surprised some people since they took him over Warren, the other tight end who people had slotted to the Bears. They lucked into Luther Burden, the third wide receiver out of Missouri in round two. They took Ozzie Trapillo, tackle out of Boston College, good value in the mid-late second round pick, and they got Shamar Turner, defensive lineman out of Texas A&M, a good value on the D line for them. Ruben Hippolyte, the second linebacker out of Maryland, and the fourth Zach Frazier or Zaw Frazier, sorry. Cornerback out of UTSA, Luke Newman, offensive tackle out of Michigan State, Kyle Monaghan, running back out of Rutgers in the seventh. So we thought they could take a running back at 10th overall, second round, third round. No, they waited till the seventh round to take Kyle Monaghan out of Rutgers. So is he going to be fantasy relevant, you think, on this team that has only Swift and Roshan Johnson? Really?
Only Roshan Johnson? You put some respect on his name.
I like Roshan Johnson. I just don't know what's going to happen with this running back room because Ben Johnson was there in Detroit when they got rid of Swift, but
Did
I thought
did
they
he
were going
get
to
rid of
bring it.
him in year one, or did he wait?
I don't know, but
Because that's the other thing. Like everyone wants him to be Detroit day one, but it might take a little bit of time for them to establish themselves. It may not all happen.
they took Colson Loveland higher than Detroit took Laperna.
Yep. But we'll see. I think that he will supplant Komet this year for sure.
What's really interesting to me is everyone was trying to argue whether DJ Moore or Rome Odunze was going to be the wide receiver used like Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, and then they draft Luther Burden, who to me profiles closer to Amon-Ra St. Brown than the other two guys.
Yep. He's just going to be
So
a burden.
yeah, this wide receiver room is going to be a burden to figure out.
Also, though, there's never going to be another Amara St. Brown. And so to think that someone's just going to fill his shoes or his role on a team, just I don't think that exists either. So
It's
I
it's
think
not
Ben
exactly
Johnson,
that. It's not exactly that, Jeff. It's he's going to run a similar offense, so who's going to take that role and who's going to get the underneath catches and the primary amount of targets is what people are trying to figure out, not who's going to
be
be
Loveland.
exactly him. It could be Loveland is a little more sprightly than Laperna is. Laperna is just a big guy with a big catch radius.
Yeah. Also, a really good coach, and I know that you think that I have this vendetta against Ben Johnson. I don't. I just question how good he is after some of his decisions have been. Like he did spurn Washington, who now has maybe one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the NFC. Um, so he could have possibly seen that coming last year. But also he let Jameson Williams determine a playoff game by having him throw in a playoff game. So, but I think the good coach though builds their playbook around what's on their current roster versus having a main playbook and trying to slot people into the roles.
I think the Jameson Williams play is definitely pretty egregious, and I think you can point to some situations where it's probably his play calling is questionable. I don't have a problem with him turning down jobs though. You say it's spurning, but I think it worked out
Well,
for
the plane was
Washington.
on the way there to pick him up, and he told them like that is definitely not saying I'm not interested in the job. He let them line everything up
They already
as the
had the
flight's
plane for
coming.
they had the plane for Aaron Glenn too. So it's not like he wasted their time. Like they're still sending it for the other coach too.
Yeah, but what if he done it? So like the circumstances matter slightly, but what if he still done that if Aaron Glenn wasn't interviewing too? Like I don't
Jeff,
think he had any regard for the organization.
I don't think he did anything wrong in that regard.
I think he should have interviewed.
I mean,
What
I
would
don't
have
know, Jeff.
what would have hurted him?
You can make the argument, but again, you're mad to some level, you're mad because he turned down the Panthers job. I would
No,
say both
I'm really happy with the Panthers coaching area now.
in hindsight, but at the
Yeah.
time you were like, I want Ben Johnson, I want Ben Johnson. And then he turned it down and you're like, I don't want Ben Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, turning down jobs is not a way to be successful in the NFL, especially at
Jeff,
32.
sometimes you don't
So
want to take a job because you don't believe in the organization's direction. And sometimes the organization needs to hear a rejection to change their ways. So
that's true.
I mean, maybe his rejection set the stage for Canales to have a little more say so when he got there.
But I don't think you would argue that Chicago hasn't had the best direction as an organization in a few decades either.
I agree, and look what happened this offseason. Like they obviously made some promises to him that he'll have a lot of sway, and I think this draft offensively looks really good.
Yeah.
Like they even got a defensive lineman who I think has a lot of potential on that line. The only thing I feel like they really missed was either a more prominent running back on the offensive side or a more prominent safety. That's really the only major issues I see with this.
Absolutely. But speaking of other teams that you haven't been high on for a decade or more, the Dallas Cowboys also had a draft. What did you make of their draft there?
So the Dallas Cowboys stayed at their pick instead of trading down. It was rumored that the Texans wanted to trade up to pick 12 if the Texas left tackle was still there. I can't remember his name. I'll just scroll down to the Saints. Kelvin Banks, sorry. Spaced out for a second. If Kelvin Banks was at pick number 12, the Texans would have traded up with the Cowboys at pick 12 to take him. Presumably, Tyler Booker should have made it to the 20s. So that would have worked out for both the Cowboys and the Texans. But the other guy they're interested in was Ted McMillan. Ted McMillan went, as we discussed, to the Panthers at pick 8. So they wasted no time. They pulled the trigger, put the ticket in for Tyler Booker right at 12, guard out of Alabama. I think he fits that team's wanting to do like a power rushing attack. So he'll help the offensive line and he'll help make the mediocre running backs that they have look a little bit better. I like the pick. Second round, they took an edge rusher. I kind of always pinned the second round as an edge rusher for the Cowboys. They just went with a different one than I thought. They took Donovan Ezuraku, edge out of Boston College. In the third, they lucked into Siobhan Revel, the cornerback out of East Carolina, being available in the third round. Obviously, he had an injury to his knee in college, so he was injured, which is why he dropped, and he only had 1 year really as a actual starter. So a lot of talent there to replace some of the secondary guys they have on the team before they have to pay those guys. So first 3 picks, really good. The fourth round, Jaden Blue, speedy running back out of Texas. I don't think that he can really be a 3-down back. He'll be more of like a 3rd-down guy, passing down guy, or speedy complement to somebody. Perfectly fine. Shamar James, linebacker out of Florida, was also in the 5th round, 6th round. Johnny Cornelius, interior offensive lineman out of Oregon. A few 7th round picks here with Jay Toa, D-line out of UCLA. Phil Maffa, ginormous, muscly running back out of Clemson to kind of complement Jaden Blue. Tommy Aking Basadi out of Maryland, D-lineman. So they kind of shotgunned some positions here to try to fill some gaps, and I think reasonably well job done for the Cowboys, and then adding to bringing in Pickens for a future third. I mean, they did address most of their needs. Maybe one of these running backs can be better than one of the guys on their team now, but overall, pretty good job.
Yeah, I agree. I'm interested in Jay and Blue and Mafa as well, but I think that remains to be seen because I think this is a Javante Williams year, if I had to guess. But Jay and Blue could push for some carries. Anything else? What do you think of Mafa versus Blue?
I don't really know that much about Maffa other than the fact that he's huge and he's a power back. I didn't really watch a lot of his film, but he's a 7th round pick compared to Jaden Blue, who's a 5th. I watched a lot of Texas football last season, and I think he'll be a compliment back. I don't think he can be a starter. Everyone in fantasy is like, oh, he's fast, and the Cowboys took him. He's going to be the best running back on the team. I don't know that, but he could be the number 2 to someone like Javante Williams right off the bat. So you have Javante getting the first and second down roles and have Blue come in and do what we thought Deuce Vaughn could do. I think Blue is a better running back than Deuce Vaughn, but I don't know how much better.
Yeah, right now I still got Williams, Sanders, Blue, Vaughn, and then Mafa, but that could all change come training camp, and Mafa could move right up the depth chart just as easily as Blue could. Seen that
I just have
before.
I have a hard time seeing Sanders make the roster, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's interesting. He had a decent year in Carolina last year, so I know you're anti Miles Sanders. He grabbed 24 balls, so and a touchdown, so he was definitely a pass catching machine. Right, and we'll see what Schottenheimer likes for his offense too. What kind of back that he likes, because that could all come down to a lot of this year. They have several different backs to choose from, but we have seen where a later round running back like Elijah Mitchell has surpassed a higher running back like Trey Sermon, even on the same cycle. Like he started the season higher than, even though that they were like 4 rounds apart. So just once everyone gets into training camp, everyone is on the same base.
Yeah,
Well, not too much
we'll see.
change. What's up?
Oh, no, I just said, oh, we'll see.
Yeah, not too much change for the Dallas offense. The biggest change, obviously, was the George Pickens act. So, all right, we're on to the Detroit Lions, and they made a very questionable 3rd round pick that we'll talk about. That I know that we disagree about now, but still feel like it's a reach. But I'll let you get started with the 1st and 2nd round picks, and we'll debate that 3rd round pick.
All right. 1st round, they took Tyleek Williams, D tackle out of Ohio State. 2nd round, they took the guard out of Georgia that I wanted Tate Ratledge for the Texans to have. But they traded up to get him at 57. 3rd round, they traded 3 3rd-round picks to move up to pick number 70 to get Isaac Tesla, wide receiver out of Arkansas. He is the wide receiver that had the best athletic score of anyone who tested at the combine. Not much college production, but almost unlimited potential for this guy. Whether or not he lives up to it, I think, is the question. I think he is potentially the long-term replacement for Jameson Williams, who has had injury problems, has had gambling problems, who kind of does dumb stuff off the field, and finally had a breakout. I think they probably want to trade him if possible and get something for him now. They are not going to be able to pay everybody on this roster going forward. That's why they wanted to bring in someone for cheap on a rookie deal. I'll just briefly go through these other guys and I'll let you answer or talk about Tesla because I know you want to. Miles Frazier, another interior lineman that I wanted the Texans to draft out of LSU. Ahmad Hassanin, edge out of Boise State. Dan Jackson, safety out of Georgia. And then finally, Dominique Lovelet, wide receiver out of Georgia.
Oh, great. So you think the Tesla pick is prelude to another move, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I think they probably trade Jameson Williams, or if no one gives him anything of value, then they just let him play out his contract.
He's got 2 years left on the deal, though. He's got this year and his fifth-year option, right? That they picked up. They have his fifth-year option, right?
Yeah, he was the first round pick, so I think that's true.
Yeah, I was just pulling him up here in Spotrac. So they have, yeah. So he signed through 2020. He makes $5 million this year, and he makes $15 million next year, which is not world-beating wide receiver money. So he's signed relatively cheap for the next 2 years. So I wonder if that happens if he sticks around. I am worried about Detroit's direction because everything that I've heard about Tesla is that he is going to be a project and time to get up to speed. So I am a little concerned about that, but we'll see how that plays out. Glenn is gone, Johnson is gone, and now it's just Campbell in the room. So that three-headed monster is now just one head and one voice. So I don't know how much that's going to change the organization. And part of me wonders if all three of them needed each other to build like this dynamic. So we'll see how that is going forward. All right, but I am worried. All right, we got to move on to the Green Bay Packers next, their division rivals. Alex, they made one of your favorite first-round picks here. Who was it?
It's Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas, pick number 23. Not someone I feel like was deserving of a first round pick based off of production, and kind of went from being a third round pick to a first round pick post combine just because of how fast he was. Don't really like when that happens. Don't think the film really backs up that as a possibility, but he is someone I think is potentially a better version of Christian Watson for whatever it's worth. So he's probably a replacement for Christian Watson. He's the first wide receiver they took in the first round in a long time. He has the potential to be a number one, maybe. I just am skeptical that that's going to happen. But second round, they took Anthony Belton, offensive lineman out of NC State. Savion Williams, wide receiver out of TCU, who's more of a utility guy. I don't really see him being actually good for fantasy purposes. I think he's more of a back of the roster utility guy. So Barron Sowell, the edge out of Texas. Colin Oliver, linebacker out of Oklahoma State. Warren Brinson, D-line out of Georgia. Michael Robinson, cornerback out of Tulane. And John Williams, offensive tackle out of Cincinnati, round out their draft class. Jeff, how do you feel about Matthew Golden and Savion Williams?
I'm a little worried about his college production, speaking specifically of Matthew Golden, but I do currently slot him in as the number 2 wide receiver behind Jaden Reed. I think Jaden Reed's still the number 1 there. He had a decent year last year. But Savion Williams could bump Christian Watson down, could bump Fontavian Wicks down, could bump McCall Hardman down as well. But Romeo Dobbs, I think I would safely pencil in the third spot right now, and Williams could surpass Dobbs there. I get really worried though because this whole locker room is full of third, second, and first year wide receivers. And that's scary. Fourth year receivers too with Dobbs. There's no veteran presence. There's no alpha yet and I don't know if Green Bay will allow an alpha to establish, and I don't think that's great for an NFL team. I think a guy like Jordan Love needs his guy, needs his Devontae Adams, needs his Jordy Nelson. Like they need someone to emerge. And last year when they gave we have 4 number ones talk, that's not what you strive for. Sorry.
Well, now they have 5 number ones.
6 if you count Hardman. But Christian Watson's time on the roster could be coming to an end. Or since he tore his ACL last year, he could begin the season on the pup and miss half of the season. And basically what that would do is protect them in case of an injury down the line, so they would be able to insert Watson back in the lineup if there was another injury, which that does happen at the wide receiver. But eventually, they're going to have to find one that they want to pay.
He has a chance to work out. It's just I don't see it yet to be willing to spend the 23rd overall pick on him. Like, I would have felt much more comfortable as a second round pick, but there he is.
Absolutely. All right. So Green Bay might take a step back this year, or they might take a step forward. We'll see. But Josh Jacobs said they needed a number one receiver, and I still don't believe that they actually.
I guess we can just mention they're another team that stood pat basically with their running back room as is too. In a very deep class, a lot of teams decided not to take a running back, which is very interesting to me.
But you like Marshawn Lloyd,
I do. I do like Marshawn Lloyd.
but you liked him a little bit too much last year. Josh Jacobs was just fine.
They didn't take anybody else, Jeff. So they like him too.
They like Emmanuel Wilson too behind
Yep.
them. So we'll see who shakes out there because he actually was pretty productive when filling in for Jacobs. All right. So we can hop over to the Los Angeles Rams next. They have a smaller draft here. Do you want to list those off really quickly?
So as a reminder, they traded away their first round pick to Atlanta. So they had Atlanta's second round pick, number 46, and they took tight end Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon over other guys I like more. So it's very interesting that they would take him of all the tight ends. So that's a flag waving at you dynasty owners to potentially target Terrence Ferguson as a good option. They took one of the edge rushers that I liked as well in the third, Josiah Stewart, edge out of Michigan, who I think will pair nicely with Verse, who they took last year. And fourth round, they took Jarquez Hunter, running back out of Auburn, to compete with Blake Corum, who they took last year, and Kyron Williams. So interesting running back room where it's literally a bunch of it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're all pointing at each other. It's 100% like that. And Hunter is someone that I liked more than Blake Corum. So I'm very curious how this pans out. They also took Ty Hamilton, D lineman out of Ohio State, Chris Paul Jr., linebacker out of Ole Miss, and Kanata Mumfield, wide receiver out of Pittsburgh. Don't really have that high hopes for Kanata, but I'm very interested in the Ferguson pick, the Hunter pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ferguson is going to be an eventual replacement for Higbee, but I do think this is Higbee's job this year. I know you've never been a Higbee guy, but he's been just fine for the Rams offense, and they did pay him. They also paid Parkinson, who's also on the roster still. So we'll see how that shakes out down the roster. But I do believe Kyron Williams is the one. I think he's done enough this through his career so far. I think he'll be another 1,000-yard rusher. And you have a really good question with Corum or Hunter now going forward. But I think that's more the question of who's going to back up Kyron Williams versus who's going to start taking snaps away. Now, where it gets really interesting is 2026 when Kyron Williams is a free agent. Do they pay him or do they pay guys? That could be the question.
I don't think Kyron Williams is really that good, in my opinion. Like, I think he lacks explosion. He's very inefficient, and maybe that's offensive line. So maybe offensive line improvements could fix that. But
But he's finished running back 6 and running back 7 the last 2 years. Like there is a track record that you can't just.
that it's more usage than it is talent.
But not very many people can handle that usage. So he's already proven that he can handle it. Why would you walk away from that?
I think they have the potential to improve there, and if Jarquez Hunter has success, he could end up taking that job from Kyron Williams. The thing is, like, I think he's very vulnerable based off of efficiency. However, no one's been able to beat him out yet. That's where it comes out to. Like, he's not a special talent, but none of the other backs have been able to beat him out.
Yeah, and we kind of thought that with Corum last year, but he's been really efficient, man. He had 4.11 yards per carry last year. He had 5.02 yards per carry the year before that. And he's not getting He's only getting 228, 316 rushes. He's only getting like 300 carries, which is what, 15 carries a game? 12, 15 carries a game? So it's not like he's a true bell cow either. So we'll see. But I expect Kyron Williams to be a guy this year.
He's
Roughly 18
almost a
carries a game.
jag to me.
Oh,
I saw someone do an explosive play chart and rank the running backs, and he was towards the bottom, and there was like 10 plus yard plays. He's a very boring running back, very inefficient in that regard. That it's not very fast, but no one can beat him out on his own team. And they keep bringing in guys. So I feel like it's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
awesome. All right. Let's hop over to the Minnesota Vikings. Who do we have for Minnesota? They had a small draft.
Very small draft. We thought they might trade down because they only had 4 picks initially, but they wasted no time taking Donovan Jackson, guard out of Ohio State, right in front of the Texans. Um, Then they took in the third round the wide receiver out of Ty Felton. I had a Vikings buddy who kept telling me that he thought the Vikings needed another wide receiver. I'm like, why do you need another wide receiver? You guys already have some. But they got Ty Felton. He's a speedy guy. He's actually a type of receiver I felt like that they needed. So I can't fault them at all for taking him. They got Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, D lineman out of Georgia. They got Kobe King, linebacker out of Penn State, and Gavin Bartholomew, the tight end out of Pitt. Not much of a haul. Most of their work was in free agency. So kind of mediocre haul, but very top heavy in my opinion. Donovan Jackson was a solid pick, and Ty Felton was an intriguing pick as well.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about Bartholomew. I think it's still TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver. I don't think anyone's going to move ahead of them just yet. How do you feel about Ty Felton? It felt like such a weird pick based on all of their needs, based on them signing Rondell Moore, based on them having Jalen Naller. Now it feels like they have 5 wide receivers deep right now, with pretty good talent too. So it feels weird given all of the potential needs and holes on the team.
Well, they have a young quarterback who's about to start, and they're trying to surround him with talent. I think Ty Felton is probably the third best wide receiver on this team right now. And if Addison keeps getting himself into trouble, Ty Felton could end up earning the number 2 role at some point, and Addison could be on his way out, just like Pittsburgh jettisoned Pickens. So it makes sense to me. I do find it questionable that they didn't trade down, but they obviously felt Donovan Jackson was a good enough offensive lineman that they stood where they were and picked.
I completely agree with that. That will help and it will move them forward. Did you also mention that they have a new backup quarterback?
They also traded for Sam Howell, which I think is a good move.
It's a great move because I think he's proven that he can be productive in the NFL. And with the right coaching, with much better than Ron Rivera coaching, with Kevin O'Connell, I think that he could actually be an NFL starter if JJ McCarthy.
I also don't think he's not that threatening of a quarterback either. But I did see the news that they tried to re-sign Daniel Jones and they offered him more money than he accepted from the Colts.
Really? You'd have to see how taxes figure into that too. You know how that's my big thing.
Yeah.
Plus, if they were offering him a shot to compete with JJ, whereas
I think they were, but he felt like the Colts was a better chance for him to start, which was interesting.
I would agree. I think that JJ McCarthy's an unknown. Anthony Richardson is kind of a known at this point, and go with the devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
Alrighty. Well, speaking of unknown at quarterback, we can move on to the New Orleans Saints, who did some interesting moves here. Number 9, they picked Kelvin Banks. A little bit earlier than I thought he would go, but not surprised. Second round pick, though, they picked the older quarterback prospect, Tyler Shock, who I liked as my number 2 quarterback prospect in this class. And then from there, they drafted some really interesting, kind of weird selections. So Vernon Broughton, the D lineman out of Texas, who I don't think was a third round value. Jonas Sanker, safety out of Virginia, who I also don't think was a third round value. Danny Stutzman, though, was a good linebacker in the fourth round out of Oklahoma. Quincy Riley, cornerback out of Louisville. Devin Neal, a dynasty fantasy favorite, running back out of Kansas, being picked by the Saints to back up Kamara, and then Maliki Motavo, tight end out of UCLA, and Fadil Diggs, edge rusher out of Syracuse. So very strange class, in my opinion. Although I like Kelvin Banks Jr., I think that was obviously the best selection.
Yep.
I like Devin Neal, although it's interesting that he is a very different type of running back than Kamara or what's the
Henry
other
Miller.
running back? Yeah, Kendry Miller.
Yeah.
Those are interesting. And then Shock being
Yep.
uh,
Brandon Whedon. I mean Tyler Show.
he's younger than Whedon was for sure. It's just
Barely.
Carr coming out, leaking out that his shoulder is busted. People talking up Spencer Rattler, and then now bringing in Shock. Like I don't know what's going on with this team. A second round selection would indicate to me that they view Shock a lot more valuable than Spencer Rattler because you're talking 40th overall pick compared to like a sixth or seventh round pick or fifth round pick in Rattler. So I would assume Rattler has an early edge just because he has a year under his belt, but I would not be surprised if Shock ends up being the starter either.
Yeah, so Show is exactly 1 year older than Spencer Rattler. They both share the same exact birthday. Rattler does have age on his side too, entering near number 2. But we'll see. Kellen Moore is the head coach there. He could be a one and done head coach though, because I mean he really hasn't been a great coordinator the last couple of years.
Just won a Super Bowl.
He did okay, Philly, but you cannot tell me that was their best offensive year, other than Barkley, which was not him. It was acquiring a player.
I'm sorry, did Barkley ever get 2,000 yards with the Giants?
Well, when you have 3 weapons on the outside and a rushing quarterback, I don't think that's super difficult, but that's talent.
I mean, did
Oh,
Zeke Elliott ever do anything when he left Kellen Moore?
no.
So
Well,
maybe
there's correlation. Correlation.
But how did Dak Prescott do with Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator that 1 year? It was arguably Dak's worst year. And then didn't he have a year with another team that was just as disappointing?
The Chargers. To be fair,
So
everyone got hurt. He's forced to play with Quentin Johnston.
absolutely. Devin Neal does interest me because we don't know how long Kamara has left. But Kamara, I expect to be the starter this year. I think he'll compete with Kendra Miller for the backup job year. What? That's
I feel
pretty
I feel
much
like
it. Go ahead.
yeah, I feel like Kamara is pretty much becoming like a passing down specialist very, very rapidly. And Devin Neal is more like an almost all around 3 down back, but not quite there in the pass game. So he could end up being a 1-2 down thumper, and Kamara staying on the Saints but moving to more of a receiving role, which would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't see them taking snaps away from Kamara after they just paid him again at the beginning of last season. So I don't see
Gotta
that
keep it fresh.
happening per se, but it's possible. But he did score 15 fantasy points per game, so he was one of the most valuable backs. Don't expect that to change much because they really haven't done much.
All right. Well, we mentioned Barkley. We could talk about his former team, the New York Giants, who, after signing Winston and Wilson at the quarterback positions, they came into this draft and bypassed Shador Sanders at number 3 and took Abdul Carter, the edge out of Penn State, which was the better choice, and then traded up with the Houston Texans to select Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. Actually, Shock was my third quarterback. Jackson Dart was my second. And then in the third round, they took Darius Alexander Jr., I don't know if the junior's there or not. I don't know why I said that. The D lineman out of Toledo. I liked him as a borderline first rounder. They took him in the third. Cameron Scattaboo, running back out of Arizona State, who a lot of people out there really love. Um, They got in the 4th round Marcus Imbo, a pretty solid offensive tackle. I thought could have been a 3rd round pick out of Purdue. They got in the 5th Thomas Vidone, the 2nd tight end out of Nebraska. He was on my list of top tight ends, so I thought they did a really good job with this draft. Corey Black, corner out of Oklahoma State. Don't really know much about him, but I thought overall this was another very strong class. I think Scadaboo pushes for potentially the starting running back role or splits with Tyrone Tracy, and I think Singletary moves back to the number 3 role. But it's very telling that they didn't take a wide receiver, so they have Neighbors. We don't know if Hyatt or Shepard or Wandale, like how that shakes out with new quarterbacks. I'm very curious how it all plays out. But I like how they have Theo Johnson and Thomas Verdone at tight end. I think that they have more weapons this year, and I like it.
Yeah, we will see there. I still expect Tyrone Tracy to edge out Scadaboo for most of the year this year. I know you're a bigger Scadaboo guy. Draft capital was not the best. I mean, it's a 4th round pick, so I don't expect them to slingshot him up the depth chart with a guy that actually proved that he could play left. We'll see. I think he'll be the 1B to Tyrone Tracy's number 1. Last year he was averaging 4.3 yards a carry, got 839 yards. I think he'll be just fine. He had no quarterback play. So teams are able to stack the box. I think Tracy is a better player than we think.
Hey, Scadaboo was taken in the 4th round in a running back heavy draft class, and Tracy was a 5th round pick.
Okay,
So
but Tracy has 1 year of NFL experience where he has an 800-yard rushing season with no offensive talent.
I don't think Tracy is that good. I think he's a home run threat, but he's not a 3 down back.
You go rush for 800 yards in a season in the NFL at 4.3 yards per carry, and he caught 30 some balls. So I think
I
he's a
think
better
it's gonna
player
be
than
a
you think
split
he is.
backfield.
Maybe.
Redrafts, I want to stay away. I'm not really a huge Cam Scadaboo guy either. So I will let other people take both these guys unless Scadaboo slides a little bit in rookie drafts.
Right. Giants will be an interesting team to watch at quarterback, running back. I think their receiver room is pretty well shaken out. I think it'll be Neighbors, kind of as it always has been. But we'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. But and I think Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger will start the year as the top 2 tight ends. But as you mentioned, we could have Thomas Vidone get up there.
And we can move on here because we've got a couple more teams to cover. But we have the Philadelphia Eagles, the champions. They had a pretty solid draft. I think they didn't have as good of a draft this year as they did last year's draft, but they were able to get Jihad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, 1st overall, by swapping positions with the Chiefs. They got Andrew Mukupa, the safety out of Texas, at the end of the 2nd round. They got Ty Robinson, D lineman out of Nebraska, McWilliams, cornerback out of UCF. They've got Smail Mondon Jr., linebacker out of Georgia, Drew Kendall, interior lineman out of Boston College, Kyle McCord. So they're collecting all the McBackups at quarterback. This guy out of Syracuse, he was in my top 4 or 5 quarterbacks as well. Miles Hinton, tackle out of Michigan, Cameron Williams, tackle out of Texas, Antoine Powell Ryland, edge out of Virginia Tech. Overall, pretty solid draft. I'm just very curious why they already have Tanner McKee and now they have Kyle McCord. They're both kind of more of your pocket quarterbacks than Hurts is. So I'm very curious why they're taking those kind of guys instead of a more mobile quarterback.
Oh, they got DTR back there.
I don't think he's he's not panned out. So
I think once Kyle McCord slipped that low, that the Howie Roseman was unable to let him slip any further, so that's why they picked him.
But who knows? They might develop him a few years, and he might be the replacement to Jalen Hurts. You don't know.
Yet what that's gonna look like. But nothing really fantasy wise for the Eagles. A lot of defense, a lot of line, which they're getting older on the line, so they're gonna have to start replacing pieces, and that's what they're doing.
Basically, what we got out of this is that their running back and wide receiver room is roughly going to stay the same. So that's stability and good for fantasy.
Absolutely. All right. We
All
got
right.
the San Francisco 49ers up next. What do we got?
Yet another defensive heavy draft as well. So first round they stayed at 11 and picked Mikael Williams, the edge out of Georgia. Second round they took Alfred Collins, the defensive lineman out of Texas. I really like Alfred Collins, and so I felt like those are good picks. Third round they took Nick Martin, linebacker out of Oklahoma State. I kind of thought that was a reach. Also in the third round, they took Upton Stout, the cornerback out of Western Kentucky. I also felt like that was a reach. CJ West, D-line out of Indiana. Jordan Watkins, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. Jordan James, running back out of Oregon. Marcus Siegel, safety out of Kansas State. Curtis Rourke, quarterback out of Indiana, Connor Colby, interior lineman out of Iowa, and then Junior Bergen, wide receiver out of Montana. So Jordan Watkins, wide receiver, being a fourth round pick is an interesting selection because he was not on my radar, and now he is. So I want to look in and find more about him. But Jordan James was the guy I compared to Bucky Irving, just because he played for the same college and kind of has similar measurements. So that's very interesting that they would trade Elijah Mitchell and Mason as well, and then select him. So I'm curious how much they like him compared to who's already on the roster with Garindo and CMC. We also have Curtis Rourke. I know you talk about them signing Mac Jones, who they liked previously, and how they shouldn't extend Purdy. I saw today that who is the NFL Films guy? What's his name again? He's always on the Ross Tucker podcast.
No, Burglar?
No, the NFL Films guy who always has the tape. What is his name?
Now I'm drawing a blank.
I'm gonna get mad. It's gonna be something.
You're giving out.
I know. Well,
There's Greg Cosell.
Greg Cosell. Greg Cosell. That is who it was. Earlier, I saw earlier that he said Curtis Rourke is perhaps one of the most refined quarterbacks in this rookie class. I'm like, okay. So is he someone that can potentially threaten Purdy or Mac Jones? I don't know. But they had success finding Purdy out of nowhere.
We will see.
So those are the three most interesting: Jordan Watkins, Jordan James, and Curtis Rourke for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, I think James has a little bit of a. He needs some things to go right for him, but he'll enter the year as probably the third back behind Garendo and obviously CMC. But he'll need a few things to go right for him. Chart. We also know Shanahan, unless he pays top buck for you, is never going to use it back the way that we want him to use it back. Look at Elijah Mitchell, Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, everyone in the past. So, but he spent a top buck on Christian McCaffrey, and he's used him like a true bell cow. I would expect nothing less here.
All right. Well, let's finish up here with the last three teams. So we have the Seattle Seahawks, who obviously in the offseason they traded away Geno Smith to the Raiders, and then they brought in your boy Sam Darnold from Minnesota. They drafted Gray Zabel, a guard in the first round out of North Dakota State. Second round, they drafted Nick Aminawari, safety out of South Carolina. They took Elijah Rojo, tight end out of Miami, who I really like. Then they drafted a potential future quarterback in Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama, in the third round. Riley Mills, the lineman out of Notre Dame, sorry. Torrey Horton, wide receiver out of Colorado State, who a lot of guys really like in the fantasy community. Robbie Out, tight end out of Alabama in the fifth round. Bryce Cabaldu, tackle out of Kansas. Damian Martinez, running back out of Miami. Mason Richmond, tackle out of Iowa. Ricky White, the third wide receiver out of UNLV. Now, what I find most interesting is the Arroyo. I find him and Martinez the most interesting, but Horton and Ricky White both going to this team and both going relatively late, I also find interesting because they can be the future behind JSN. I think Cooper Kupp, I forgot to mention they brought him in as well. I think he's a short-term investment, and I think these guys could get developed and could be a good trio with Jackson Smith and Jigba.
We will see if they can do it in the NFL. As you know, I always say if you've done it in college, you've done it in college. So we'll see if this translates over to the NFL. I don't know if you saw the interview with Xavier Legette this week, but basically he said that the one thing that makes a successful NFL player is just studying and being up on the details. Not everyone.
Like Arroyo, especially dynasty rookie drafts. I don't
He
know
might
how high to put him or not, but
he might
I
be the best. He might be the best tight end out of this group. There's a scenario where he is fantasy wise.
well, it's very interesting because everyone wants to do Tyler Warren or Loveland, but Arroyo might be the best athlete. Fannin
I like
Jr.
Fannin.
He's got the best production profile and he's got good enough traits. And then Mason Taylor as well has the best opportunity out of everybody, I think, because the Jets are pretty barren outside of Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. And Mason Taylor might be getting a lot of targets early, and he's got the Hall of Fame pedigree. So I don't know. There's some good tight ends, and I don't necessarily think Tyler Warren or Loveland are going to live up to first round value in rookie drafts.
We will see. We will see. I like Loveland a lot more. I think Loveland will be my one, but Warren has a lot of unknown around him right now. So we will see. I think we got two teams left though, Alex, and the first one's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I know you're gonna pick apart some of this draft because your boy went to the wrong team.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers surprised everyone kind of by taking wide receiver Emeka Ibuka, 18th overall, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. My number one wide receiver in this entire class. With how good they've been in talent evaluation, I think that just solidifies that he is the best wide receiver in this class. Also, in the second round, they took Benjamin Morrison, the corner out of Notre Dame. Third round, another corner, Jacob Parrish, cornerback out of Kansas State. Fourth round, they took David Walker, an edge rusher out of Central Arkansas. They doubled up, getting another edge rusher, Elijah Roberts out of SMU. And then seventh round, they took Tez Johnson, another wide receiver, this time out of Oregon. So already having Evans as the number one wide receiver there, having Godwin as well that they re-signed this offseason. They took McMillan last year. So now they brought in two more wide receivers. I'm very intrigued by that. Tez Johnson's more of a team flyer. He seems like he has the ability on tape, but he tested horribly, and he's like 150 pounds. So that's kind of concerning for teams. But that's why he went in the seventh round, especially after the Tank Dell injury in the pros. People aren't really going to bet on smaller receivers like that anymore. But I like Ibuka a lot. He's going down the same path as JSN did when he was selected by the Seahawks. That they already had Metcalf and Tyler Lockett there. This is kind of the same situation. And now they most likely will slow play Godwin to make sure he's fully healthy. And then Mike Evans, it literally might be just one more year of him left. And then JSN's the number one.
JSN.
Sorry, I got confused after talking about JSN. Emeka Ibuka might be number one.
You were just making sure I was paying attention.
They're both Ohio State wide receivers that went in a similar situation.
Obviously, I think they're going to win the division. Their receiver room shakes out as anyone's guess because they did like Billy McMillan last year, so they could be setting up a future where McMillan and Mbuka are the 1 and 2, like the Evans and Godwin of the future, and Tyce Johnson could be the 3. There's a lot of things that they could do there, but I don't expect a lot of year one help there. But we'll see. We will see. All right, and then there was one.
One more team left, and it is the Washington Commanders. They had their first round pick finally, and they picked at the bottom finally, I should say. With the 29th pick, they took Josh Connolly Jr., the tackle out of Oregon. They took In the second round, Trey Amos, the corner out of Ole Miss. So they made the most of their first 2 picks. The other 3 don't really mean that much to me. Jalen Lane, wide receiver out of Virginia, 6th round pick. Kane Medrano, linebacker out of UCLA, 7th round pick. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, running back out of Arizona. None of those 3 moved the needle for me, but Josh Connerly Jr. and Trey Amos as a 1-2 combination was a very good one.
Yeah.
So what do you think of Jalen Lane?
Doesn't do anything for me.
He's not a future 1 or 2 for the team. That's really what they need to do. Debo and McLaurin are both 29 years old. They just turned 29 this year. I just don't see how you could build a roster with older receivers. I don't think Luke McCaffrey's it. So Jalen Lane would have to turn into something in order for there to be some back.
I haven't seen it with him. All right. Well, anything else to talk about any of these picks?
Right. We do have a couple awesome topics coming up in our next couple of episodes. One is our top 24 dynasty rookies, and the other one is our first run of 2025 NFL standings. We're waiting for that schedule to come out first because the schedule does matter. Teams that play on short weeks or have a home game on Thursdays, there isn't games. You need to see what that looks like move forward.
All right. I am looking forward to those. But that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading or watching this episode. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.